All right, so looking at Wilson and the Paris Peace Conference, let's start off by looking at the three mistakes that Wilson makes at the very beginning of all of this. Number one, he decides to go to Paris himself. So this is unprecedented because never before had an American president left the nation for such a prolonged period of time. He leaves January 18th of 1919. The treaty is going to be given to the Germans or signed on June 28th, 1919. So he's gone for 6 months. And this is going to, have a negative impact on this progressive political coalition that was fragile at best when he was leaving. When he comes back, major changes are going to happen as far as who he thought who he thought he could count on for support, and now who he can't count on. Second, midterm elections of 1918. Wilson defied anybody that was giving him advice, and he urged voters to elect a Democratic Congress to support his foreign policies. This is going to offend the Republicans, who had, for the most part, supported Wilson's war measures. And in November of 1918, a week before the armistice is declared, the Democrats lost control of both houses of Congress. With an opposition majority in this new Congress, Wilson further weakened his standing by making a third mistake. He failed to appoint a prominent Republican to the staff of peace commissioners. I think William Taft summed it up best when he said that Wilson's real intention in going to Paris was to hog the whole show. And yeah, indeed, when he gets to Paris, he's greeted as a hero, even a savior. Anywhere he goes, there's millions of people there cheering for him. Seeing him as like a prophet of peace and a spokesman for humanity. Promised that the Great Crusade was going to be the war to end all wars. Europe loved this. Now, who is at Paris? Here, who's at the Paris Peace Conference from January to June? The Big Four. Clemenceau from France, David Lloyd George from Great Britain, Woodrow Wilson from the United States, and Vittorio Orlando from Italy, known as the Big Four. Problem here is that Wilson promises peace without victory. The French insisted on harsh provisions in the peace treaty, weakened Germany. Prime Minister David Lloyd George of Great Britain wanted it. Vittorio Orlando wanted land. And so these hammering out the treaty is going to prove to be complex, and tensions are going to rise multiple times throughout this whole negotiations process. And this is when Wilson's going to make yet another controversial decision. He's going to insist that the League of Nations be the top priority in the treaty. Whatever compromises he might have to make regarding territorial boundaries, reparations, whatever mistakes might result from this Paris Peace Conference, Wilson believed that a League of Nations committed to collective security would ensure international stability. The collective security part is the Article number 10 that we're going to talk about a little bit later. Article number 10 is going to be what the Lodge reservations aim to weaken when the treaty gets debated in the Senate. So looking at Article 10 of the Charter, Wilson called this the heart of the League of Nations. This is going to be the thing that Wilson will bet everything on, as far as his popularity, as far as the success and or failure of the treaty. So because Wilson's willing to negotiate, what actually goes into the treaty? Wilson does give in to French demands for territorial concessions and reparations, which are war payments made by Germany. These concessions and these reparations are going to keep Germany weak, impoverished, and unfortunately, they're going to be so weak and so humiliated that they're going to be eager for revenge during the 1920s. Once again, allowing somebody like a Hitler to come to power. France, they get Germany, or in the treaty, France gets the agreement that the Rhineland region, the border between France and Germany, will be demilitarized for 15 years. France gets to exploit Germany's Saar Valley, SAAR, Saar Valley coal mines for 15 years. And then after that, the people in that region get to vote whether or not they want allegiance to France or to Germany. On the discussion of reparations, this is when you see these exchanges at the conference become very, very bitter. The British and the French wanted Germany to pay for the entire financial cost of the war, including the payment of veteran pensions. On this point, Wilson made perhaps his most fateful concession. He accepted what was known as the War Guilt Clause in the treaty. And the War Guilt Clause is a clause in which Germany confessed responsibility for the war and thus took responsibility for the entire expense of the war. This is what's going to offend the Germans the most. This is what's going to make for persistent bitterness that Adolf Hitler would later seize upon to launch the Nazi Party movement. This is the clause in the treaty that Wilson himself had privately admitted that if he was a German, or he were a German, he would refuse to sign the treaty. And so all these concessions, to territorial concessions, all these, the War Guilt Clause, everything, all these terms here that are meant to punish and weaken Germany are going to be sent to the Germans in May of 1919. And the Germans return it 3 weeks later with 443 pages of criticism. Few changes are made. But then the Germans, they still refused to sign, namely because of that War Guilt Clause. And so the French threatened to move their army across the Rhine River. We will start this war back up again. That's what the French said. Probably one of the only times that the French actually scare somebody in thinking that they could defeat them on the battlefield. Eh? Because, the French, they don't. Yeah, okay. Anyway, so finally on June 28th, 1919, the Germans give up. And they signed the treaty in the Hall of Mirrors at Versailles. You're gonna read a small excerpt in class, or you can. I guess I didn't make it available to you, but I really strongly recommend you reading the small excerpt from this book called Paris 1919, and it talks about the German delegation and what they were feeling in the days leading up to and after signing this fateful treaty. Looking at our boy Adolf Hitler, once he found out what the Treaty of Versailles was going to do to Germany, he vowed revenge. And I quote, "It cannot be that 2 million Germans have fallen in vain. We demand vengeance." End quote. And so Hitler in 1919 is already planning out how is he going to seize upon this and get revenge for the betrayal of the German people in the late spring, early summer of 1919. So in July, Wilson is going to return home from Versailles, amid a great clamor of popular support. A third of the state legislatures had already endorsed the League. 33 of the nation's 48 governors had already endorsed the League. 2 days later, on July 10th, Wilson called upon the Senate to accept what he calls this great duty and to ratify the treaty that had been guided by, as what he says, the great hand of God. Wilson says the stage is set, the destiny disclosed. Dare we reject it and break the heart of the world? Well, congressional leaders, unfortunately for Wilson and unfortunately for the world, are ready to break their heart. Whoa. Senator Henry Cabot Lodge is a Republican, really has an intense dislike for Wilson. He denounced the Versailles Treaty, what he calls a foolish scheme of making mankind suddenly virtuous by a statute or written constitution. And so this is going to unleash this animosity that Lodge and Wilson have towards each other. Wilson thought Lodge was too high on himself, too prone to promise more than he could deliver. Lodge is keenly aware that he can talk to certain groups of people that already oppose the treaty in Congress. The resentment against the treaty that was felt by German Americans, Italian Americans, Irish Americans within the United States. The disappointment of liberals with Wilson's compromises on reparations and territories. The distractions of demobilization. The domestic problems that result because of this conversion to a peacetime economy. These are the things that Lodge could harp on. And these are the things that could gain the Lodge Republicans support in not ratifying, not supporting this treaty. So in the Senate, there's a couple groups of people. Number one, people that support the treaty, 100%. Number two, there's a group of senators, 14 Republicans and 2 Democrats. They call their irreconcilable. They refuse to support American membership in the League of Nations on any terms. Then there's a larger group called the reservationists. These are congressmen or senators that insisted on limited American participation in the League. So Henry Cabot Lodge is part of these reservationists. And so he proposed a set of amendments that address his reservations. The only way to get Senate approval of the treaty was for Wilson to meet with Lodge and others and agree to these revisions. Wilson is not going to do this. He opposes weakening the Article 10 of the League, and he doesn't want to, he doesn't want to compromise anymore. So he, in September of 1919, is going to take the argument to the people, and he's going to go on this train tour and appealing for the public to support him and support the treaty. All right, and so he gives speech after speech after speech, and finally this wears on him. And he's going to have a major stroke that paralyzes half his body, almost kills him. And for the rest of his presidency, he's going to be pretty much a stubborn, bitter old man. And for the rest of his life, for that matter. Refusing to compromise on all fronts. So, the treaty gets sent through the Senate, all right, with reservations. People being, loyal to Wilson. The irreconcilables defeat the bill. They put it down. Treaty is not ratified. So, Lodge says, we'll do it without the reservations. Gets voted down. And so in the end, Wilson doesn't get the Senate to ratify the Treaty of Versailles due to the fact that the Senate is afraid that is afraid that committing to Article 10 and this idea of collective security would undercut their power to declare war, would commit American troops to into international affairs abroad, and it goes against this growing sense of isolationism that is happening and tends to be the mood of America during this time. Leading up to the election of 1920, this is what Wilson I call the solemn referendum, that the people will speak out against these Republicans and against Lodge and the people that voted down this bill. Unfortunately, the Republicans had a candidate named Warren G. Hardin, who was tapped into the tune and the mood of the American people, who were tired of war and protest and uncertainty. And Warren G. Hardin offered them a return to normalcy. And the Republicans win. Warren G. Hardin wins. Wilson loses. The Treaty of Versailles loses. Wilson's dream of the League of Nations, born ineffective and powerless without their creator, the United States, is going to lose. And the ultimate irony of World War I is that it was billed to be the war to end our wars. And yet, because of the outcome and the mishandling of the peace negotiations and Wilson's refusal to compromise at home and his willing to compromise too much, some might say, abroad, is going to do so much to start the biggest war ever, World War II.